So it's changed a lot over time, but our core investment approach we have always been focused in a single product type. So we have always been, and only been for the entire 35 years of DLC, an investor in open air shopping centers. We're both the investor and we're the operator. Our core thesis has always been that we've been able to acquire cash flowing at positive leverage existing shopping centers and then bring to bear the talent of our team, our human capital, to improve those cash flows, to improve that net operating income, to improve the merchandising mix over time. It's the meeting of essentially fairly low-cost, value-oriented open-air retail in well-located locations. The dream, of course, is to own the shopping center at Main and Broadway, and to bring to bear how we can improve it. When I started the business in the early 1990s, the business started by acquiring both foreclosed shopping centers from banks, the RTC, the FDIC, life insurance companies, and in some instances even the distressed debt, and then foreclosing ourselves. So we've always been in the value creation, redevelopment, value add space. We have never been, and our investment thesis has never been, to acquire existing, completely stable core real estate. And then I think the other real facet of our core investment strategy and thesis over the years has been we want to lease space and partner with retailers who are 110% focused on helping people in middle-class America and upper middle-class America acquire the things that they need to raise their families and to feed their families. So 69% of our assets are anchored by a grocery store. 85% of our assets have some grocery component in it. That might be a warehouse club, a wholesale club, a specialty grocer, a gourmet store, or a conventional grocer, or a conventional supercenter. Walmart, Target are both large clients. And we're focused really increasingly in the last 5 years on larger assets that serve a broader community, multiple anchor tenants, institutional grade assets, or we can make them institutional grade. And we're very focused on the value space. We are big believers that the American consumer, who we think is the stalwart of the global economy, is exceptionally well focused on value. And that has led to things like the expansion of all of the off-price retailers who are very, very large customers of ours, TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington, some examples. So while the investment strategy is always evolving based on market conditions, it has actually been extraordinarily durable and extraordinarily consistent over the 35 years because we continue to feed into the part of the American economy that services the basic needs of the American consumer. So I think in the last 3 to 4 years, the key drivers of how you add value to shopping centers as an investment have changed to some degree. And as a result, the 2 or 3 key components in our underwriting have evolved. I wouldn't say they've changed completely, but they've evolved. In the Amazon is going to destroy physical presence retail era of the 2010s, people were very focused on long lease terms, anchor credit leases, et cetera. Increasingly now, because the market is so vibrant, so strong, and the supply and demand economics so favor the owner or the landlord, there's been no new supply added. Retailing in the United States in stores has proven to be far more resilient than the pundits all believed, and we were right about that. Increasingly now we're focused on what are the existing rents, how long that existing lease term is, can we get to the spaces, i.e., if you have someone who's at the end of a long-term lease term and option periods, and maybe they're paying a rent that was set 20 or 30 years ago, rents today are far higher. So we're much more interested now in, is the lease going to end sooner rather than later, so that we can readjust the rent to today's current market rents. That's one component. We're always very focused on tenant mix. We continue to be focused on assets that generate a lot of traffic. The traffic is growing. In recent years, a variety of tools have grown up that have enabled us to accurately get estimates of foot traffic at our shopping centers, which prior to 2020 or 2021 were very, very hard to get, very, very expensive, and not very accurate. That's improved dramatically. That's another component of what I think a lot of people, but us in particular, have added to our underwriting is how is the foot traffic? Which retailers are driving the foot traffic? How does a location that we're evaluating for sale compare to a competing location? We're buying an asset right now in a mid-sized city in the Midwest that's growing. And the asset we're buying, we were able to find simple data online that showed that it was the most visited shopping center in the entire state where it's located. And that gave us a lot of comfort. So that's been added to our underwriting repertoire, if you will. But we continue to be very focused on rent, very focused on going in yield, and very focused on what are the 2 or 3 things that we can do to add value, whether that's roll below market leases to market, whether it's an opportunity to take a poorly performing retailer and increase the foot traffic and the rent and the sales in the center by replacing them with a more current, up-to-date retailer who is more connected to what the American consumer wants today. So, for example, in the last decade, amongst many other transactions, we have redeveloped 8 shopping centers that formerly had a Kmart or a Sears in it. And in every instance, we cut up that box for multiple anchor tenants who are much more in demand today, who drive much more foot traffic, pay much more rent, and are much more what the American consumer wants to shop at. So I think this is a great question to ask an entrepreneur. Most people think that entrepreneurs are all gas, no brakes all the time, and that we have no risk governor on us. I actually believe that I was talking, of all people, I was talking to my wife who formerly had her own business as well. She sold it many years ago. I was talking to my wife the other day, and she said, what do you think enables you to continue to be successful 35 years into this particular business that you started, a business that I started when we were engaged before we were even married? And I said, one of the things that I think people underestimate that's important for entrepreneurs to be able to do well is entrepreneurs need to be great risk managers. You need to be enough of a risk manager to govern your own tendency to be overly optimistic. So what does that mean? Managing leverage, keeping leverage at a reasonable level. Not, just because the debt market wants to give you more money, that may not be the right thing to do. You may not want to take the most leverage that the capital markets will provide you in frothy times, because if your if your debt rolls at a time where the market is not so accommodating, you could have a real problem. And I think a lot of groups that are investors in office buildings in the United States and in other places in the world have seen that come home to roost for them. So managing leverage levels, being your own risk, as an entrepreneur, you have to be your own risk manager at the end of the day. You can't outsource evaluating the risk. So that's one. We take virtually no debt that's personally guaranteed. So we own about $4 billion worth of assets today. We have probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million to $2.2 billion worth of total debt. Virtually none of it has a personal guarantee associated with it, and virtually none of it is crossed amongst the assets. So managing your debt stack, being incredibly detail oriented around what your loan documents say and how they could cause you to have personal recourse, managing that debt level at a reasonable level. We're also incredibly fastidious about underwriting which tenants we'll invest in. So every tenant would love a landlord to be willing to provide them with a large tenant improvement allowance, TI or TA, as it's referred to in the industry. We like to see our tenants invest alongside us, right? If you've got great credit, will we build you a turnkey? We might build you a turnkey, and we do frequently. for tenants that have very, very strong investment grade credit ratings. But we like to check our tenants' credit. We do business with close to 3,000 non-national chain tenants across our portfolio. And we run a credit check on every single one of those tenants. We make sure those tenants provide some manner of personal guarantee on their lease obligations. And we want to review their business plans and understand that we think their business plans are viable and that they have enough capital to be able to actually get that business off the ground and support it while it's ramping up and becoming profitable for them. So there are lots of different sort of avenues that risk management encompasses, whether that's evaluating tenant credit, managing your own capital, your own debt stack, your own capital, thinking about how much capital you put in each market. We're very, very research driven about the markets that we go to, and we're careful about how much capital we deploy in markets, particularly if those markets could be subject to significant changes in their microeconomies. Those are just some of the things. Honestly, we're constantly thinking about risk. We're constantly thinking about how do we generate the best possible risk-adjusted returns without taking on too much risk. And that's really that's what drives our investment committee when we meet.